Hello everybody, Nemesis, but the Lord of Shadows here. Sounding awfully chipper compared to my last RWBY related video. That's because not only am I going back in time with nostalgia and love, but because all of my rage was lost in that video, and I'm not going to apologize to that, because I already apologized in the comments section of its review. But today I'm going to start this little series of videos leading up to Volume 5's finale, and while I have no faith in Volume 5 at all, I am going to wait for Volume 6 to be solid in its own right to be entertaining, something yada yada, all that stuff. I hope Volume 6 is better. I still think it's worth leading up to the finale though. For the next 3 weeks I'm going to lead up to the finale with my ranking of every RWBY episode in each volume, with Volume 4 coming out on the same day as the finale. Then the week after I'll do my ranking of Volume 5 episodes alongside my look back at the whole volume, and then following that my unhonest trailer will be coming out. Originally this is going to be a top 5 and bottom 5, but well, RWBY volumes don't really have much more than that anyway, and this volume really only has 10 episodes, so let's go do this. And as for who ants, I plan to have those leading up to Volume 6's debut. Let's get started. Number 10. The Badge and the Burden is trash, and was really fighting number 9 for the spot on this list. But this episode just barely scraped out as the worst of the worst. For a few reasons. The big one for me is the wasted potential. I think if this episode was not the last in which RWBY and Weiss have issues, and if Weiss was a lot more disobedient either before or during the episode, and this just kicked off a Weiss growing to care about RWBY character arc, that it'd have been a pretty good episode. Now Weiss is arguably the most developed character in the series, but she still could have been better if she slowly became tolerant of RWBY instead of getting a harsh talking to from Mr. Virgin Peter Port. Not that the episode has much else. I mean, Weiss changed his outfits between parts with no explanation, and it's even weirder than watching the DVD and Blu-ray releases. The Borbatus is a pathetic excuse of a Grimm that only got an advantage because RWBY distracted Weiss, and the melodrama is very, very cringy. And I hate using that word, like apparently all other YouTubers do, but it's hard to go back and watch this episode without getting serious cringe feelings from it. That combined with Volume 1's potatoist of potato animation, the complete lack of any real comedy out of the opening scene, and any good action whatsoever, it makes this episode a complete non-event. There's basically no reason to watch this episode. None of Weiss's animosity is demonstrated before or after the episode. Actually, no. Weiss does seem to have animosity before, but that's all lost before this episode even got uploaded, and Weiss seemed to not have it anymore until a quarter way through this one. And that was related to her not doing anything in the forest, instead of just being childish and bumbling specifically. In fact, all of her anger seems to be towards RWBY being the leader, which is not demonstrated previously, as all that animosity was to RWBY being an idiot. The only thing this even continues onward is Weiss's occasional jab at RWBY. The only reason to watch this episode would be if you're watching RWBY for the first time and want all of it, because that's just how big your brain for Monty Ohm and his godly action scenes of hype justice is. Or if you like the episode, in which case I'm sorry. Number 9. Okay, really, what else would be so low other than the last entry? It's Jaunedice, everyone. While The Badge and the Burden was far more unnecessary and full of wasted potential, Jaunedice counters that by being so cliche I swear this was manufactured in France. The episode is a bully arc. And while I don't watch enough anime or western shows that open themselves up to the possibilities of having a bully arc, I can tell how cliche and boring this is. It's that whole one asshole pushing down a meek or weak character who then feels bad about themselves, get a bit of help from a character with a reddish or orange palette, and then stands up to them with the help of someone else plot. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's just the plot of Cool Cat Saves the Kids. Yeah, it's that bad. Although the episode isn't as bad as that film, because it has two redeeming qualities. For one thing, it leads into the Forever Fall episode, which I believe first introduces semblances, or at least the name and the concept, and is responsible for the John and Pyrrha training subplot that ripples throughout the Beacon arc, and even afterwards. So the episode is needed for that. It's also what makes Extracurricular's opening scene so cathartic. The episode's other redeeming quality is Bartholomew Oobleck, who is literally magical, and I love him. So Jaunedice might be a cliche pile of boring, but hey, it did inspire a meme, so that's good. Unfortunately, because of Jaunedice, we got Team Coffee, but hey, that team has his fans, so I guess that's actually good. Number 8. Forever Fall is an episode I'm very mixed on. On one hand, I think this is criminally low, but on the other, I think this is exactly where it needs to be. As mentioned before, the episode does have the benefits of having two important moments in it that do continue beyond the Beacon arc, and it does have more good things. One of them is that I just like how Forever Fall looks as a place. Another is the "that's a big Ursa" line, which is amazing. Another is that the episode's music is one that I actually like more than most. However, for all its praise, it has its flaws too. Russell hitting Yang's boobs and then not moving, combined with Thrush looking like he hit a wall, for instance. No, the real issues are things like the overall slow and boring pace of it, The fact that they needed to animate a scene just for this episode in the DVD release to work, which does kind of show it doesn't flow too well, and that's one of the very, very few lines Pyrrha and RWBY share together. And notably, the idea of Grimm being attracted to the sweetness of tree sap not only makes no fucking sense, it will be very easily exploitable as a weakness, but it's never brought up or talked about again. Also, the idea that Team Cardinal would be afraid of a slightly larger than average version of a pretty weak Grimm is very laughable, and clashes with their bullying of someone as powerful as Velvet, even if she's meek. But you know, I enjoy this episode a hell of a lot more than the last two, and think this is where the episodes go from bad to mediocre. Number 7. The Shining Beacon is an episode I can't with good faith say I dislike, but can't say I entirely like it either. The episode has some comedic and funny writing, successfully introduces 4 of the main cast, and even cameos a 5th, and has some really, really nice scenery. But it's also kind of boring. While a lot happens and it's very entertaining to watch Ruby and John look like fools, it's not the most exciting episode. And really, that's all it's got going against it. The episode has plenty of laughs and plenty of good character moments, but not much else. It is only episode 2 though, so really that's all I would expect from it. Number 6. This was another hard placement for me, and while I argued a bit internally, I eventually decided on the Stray. While there were important details in it, such as Blake being a faunus, the debatably good introduction to Sun Wukong, the first mention of the White Fang since Chapter 1's passing interest, and Penny Polendina being a thing, and everyone knowing she's a robot immediately, and a hint at whilst actually having some depth, the episode also has some screwed up time stuff, which is further expanded upon next episode. 12 hours to think she's been gone for days, Weiss. But the chapter is a really big character-based one, and I think it does that pretty well for Volume 1 standards, showing hidden deaths for Weiss and Blake, and expanding on minor details like Blake and Weiss's reaction to her being bullied, Blake's bow-related things, and implied distance from the others despite not being distant at all, and so on. The episode's good, enough said. Number 5. Black and White is one of those episodes that perfectly fits the number 5 spot. It's got a lot of awesome stuff, but not really enough to make it anything more than average compared to the rest. Let's get it out of the way. The gunchucks are a highlight of the entire series, so much that they alone managed to get this fight scene into our top 10 RWBY fights, and nobody watched that. This episode also expands further on Blake's side of her backstory that will be further expanded in Volume 4, which I think is good, and has some awesome moments that are very, very memorable. The banana scene a lot of people remember, the gunchucks of course, Penny's special beam cannon and string pulling down Bullethead's feet, and the generally nice finish overall. The episode's a good send-off that perfectly encapsulates the volume. It's heavily flawed, but has a lot of awesome moments both in action and character. As for flaws, well, not only is the consistency of police cars bullshit, but some of the gags don't really work for me, the timeline's all screwy and some things are pretty dumb. But with the lovely little cliffhanger scene that actually ties into the next volume, something that got progressively rarer, this chapter ends the volume very nicely. Number 4. Most often you'll find people putting the first episode of a series as their favourite, due to it introducing them, and while the red trailer was technically that for a lot of people, there are also a lot more who like Ruby Rose because of that. However, I don't, because while it is a fantastic episode, it's also pretty meh. For one thing, the action is great, and the introduction to Ruby, Glinda, Cinder, and Yang specifically were all very nice. The opening is mysterious, intriguing, and begging to be expanded. Begging, Rooster Teeth. And the old truck key gets a line for once. This episode is a fantastic introduction, and I do love it a lot. But I know there are flaws. For one thing, the backdrops are detailed to the point of being bad. Watch the evolution of Ruby's art duology, links in the description to know what I mean. And the rest of the animation for talking and such is kind of stilted. I also think the vocal work is nowhere near what it becomes later on, and some of it is quite droll. And the shadow people, I mean, this is prominent throughout the entire volume. It even gets mocked in RWBY Tubi. I mean, just why? So good intro, good episode, but nothing overly special. Number 3. The first step is the introduction to one of RWBY's few legitimate story arcs, spanning 5 YouTube videos, the Emerald Forest arc. This is very important to why I love this episode, as it ties in with the previous and following episodes very well. It introduces Ren, Pyrrha, and Nora to us properly, has some very nice little details and references. It's quite entertaining overall, it's funny at points. It's just a nice, well-crafted little episode. I don't know what else to say, really. Number 2. The Emerald Forest is a fantastic episode. It's just It's great, and it has one of the few exposition scenes pre-Volume 5, one of the few entertaining ones of the whole series. It has a good Renation scene that we won't see again for fucking ages. It has John unlocking his aura, which is nice. It leads into the next episode very well. Yang and Blake get a kinda nice scene, and it ends with a cliffhanger. The only flaw of this episode, really, in my opinion, is the very bad Wisden vs. Beowulf's pack, due to it being a complete nothing scene and the Beowulfs being very polite and waiting. But hey, at least this is the first sign of aggression between them. Aggression that is settled in one episode and not related to the specifics of the aggression in said episode. Number 1. Obvious choice is fucking obvious. Very fucking obvious. Players and Pieces has it all. It's got humor, very important details, and important details on the characters themselves shown solely through their fighting styles. It has mind-blowingly good fight scenes. There's really nothing else to say. I mean, there's good music, there's fantastic action, there's a cliffhanger, there's a lot of good stuff here. It's fantastic, and I mean, yeah, I'm a lot worse at explaining why something's good than bad, but really this episode has it all and takes my lovely number 1 place. So that was Volume 1. Was Volume 1 good? Not really. It was pretty bad, pretty crappy, but I mean, it had good introductions, had a lot of good things. It was only the first volume, it did its job well. Next week we're going into Volume 2 and seeing vast improvements in my ranking of those episodes. Thank you for watching. This is the Lord of Shadows signing off once again. I did a thing with my hands, you can't see it because this is an audio recording.